Hi everybody, welcome back to my channel. So today I'm going to be doing a quick review of a Netflix show that I got a request from one of my fans to do the Stretch Armstrong and the Flex Fighters. I'm going to be doing a review of that right now. I'm going to be going over different topics such as the animation, the characters, and the overall story. And also my overall opinion of the show. But just to give you guys a quick summary about it, basically it's about these three teenagers named Jake Armstrong, Nathan Park, and Ricardo Perez, who sneak into an industry which they're not supposed to go, and they get their DNA mixes with the, highly advanced chemical called hyperflexurium, and they get these weird, interesting, cool powers, such as Jake Armstrong becoming Stretch, where he could stretch his body at, kind of like Mr. Fantastic, he could stretch as much as he can. Nathan Park becomes Wingspan, meaning he could fly with his arms like this. And Ricardo Perez becomes Omni-Mass, where his bones become dense and he could break through anything, basically. That's the overall story. I wanted to talk about the animation first. The animation of this show reminded me so much of kind of like the 2000 shows. There's some moments in the show when I was watching it, and for some reason I thought of, if you guys remember this show from the 2000s called Witch, so this show is about, Stretch Armstrong and the Flex Fighters are about a group of guys, but Witch was a group of girls who also get weird powers out of nowhere. But the animation for some reason reminded me of that, and it also reminded me how, again, about a group of friends who get weird powers, and they have to keep their identity secret, all that stuff. So there was this, I know similarities between that and Witch. There's also kind of callbacks for some reason, I don't know why, to the Winx Club, and also there are also callbacks for me in regards to the animation to Teen Titans. Not Teen Titans Go. Not that show. Sorry guys, no, not that one. The original Teen Titans show. The one that was actually good. And I think the reason why there was a callback to that show was because the voice actor for Stretch Armstrong, who does, who plays Stretch Armstrong in the show, is the same voice actor who does Robin. And even the way they animated Stretch Armstrong, like the way his eyes would move with the mask and everything, reminded me so much of Robin. So there's, in terms of that, like the animation, there's so much callbacks to those shows that I remember growing up with when I was like 10 or 11 or 12 years old. I remember that. So the way the show is animated, Stretch Armstrong and the Flex Fighters, for me was a callback to the mid-2000s with Teen Titans, Witch, Winx Club, all that good stuff. So which in this case benefited the show. I thought the animation was really good. Okay, now with the animation out of the way, let's get into the characters. Now keep in mind this is a spoiler review, so I'm going to be revealing lots of stuff. First off, let's talk about the heroes, which is the main three: Jake Armstrong, Nathan Park, and Ricardo Perez. They're your typical high school kids, basically. Jake Armstrong, he kind of reminds me of a cross between Robin, maybe because of the voice actor who plays him, and plus like how I mentioned earlier how his mask would move, kind of like Robin. So there's a cross of Robin mixed with Spider-Man. The fact that Jake did not want his identity and the identity of his friends to be revealed because he wants to protect his loved ones, which is kind of saying like in Spider-Man's situation, he doesn't want people to know who he is because he wants to protect his loved ones and whatnot. Which, by the way, I will say this, that is a good reason for a superhero to keep their identity hidden, but at the same time, it is kind of like a typical superhero trope, like, people don't know who I am, so, it's like I protect my loved ones, yet no one could recognize their voice or anything. I don't know. I just think it's a typical superhero cliche. But the reasoning behind it makes sense. Okay, at least they gave a reason for it. But Stretch, he's the leader of his group of friends, and you do see why he is a good leader. He is a very strategic. He likes to plan, versus the other two, like Nathan Park. He has good intentions, but he can be a little unsure of himself sometimes. And then Ricardo Perez, I hate to say it, but he's not my favorite character. He was probably my least favorite character in the show because he's so egotistical and only thinks about himself. But you kind of see why he's that way because his parents are never around. So he's not like a family type of person because he never, he never had that, I guess you could say. So that could be the reason why to his personality. But if I had to choose between the three, between Stretch, Nathan, and Ricardo, I'd probably go with Nathan because even though sorry guys, let me just fix this computer. Even though Stretch had good leadership qualities, he would get too confident with himself, and there was one particular episode where he was too confident to even trust the bad guy, and his teammates told him not to do it, but he didn't listen. So, there are times where Stretch does get a little overconfident of his leadership abilities, and then Ricardo Perez is always egotistical, never changes. So I kind of like Nathan. I think he's one of my favorites. He's unsure of himself, but he's a good guy, and he means the best. He may not be as confident as Stretch, but at least he's not egotistical as Ricardo. So I like him. He's cool. Who else can I talk about? Okay, let's talk about. So like I said, I have my computer here for notes. So there's also. Okay, I'm gonna talk about Blind Strike and Mr. Rook last because, yeah, they have interesting stories. But anyway, let's talk about Malcolm Kane. Now, Kane, he for some reason. He's very hard on the Flex Fighters because he's like, why are we allowing a group of teenagers to be our superheroes? Which, yeah, a lot of people are probably wondering that too. But the reason why he's hard on them is because he wants them to know, like, hey, like, this is the real world. You're going to get into these types of situations. You got to step up your game. And to be honest, when they showed, there was an episode in the Netflix show where they show a little bit about Kane's past, that when he was like a teenager, he used to be part of a gang, but then he left that life to pursue a better life, so which is why he went into what's it called, Rook Industries. So you kind of see his backstory and to understand why he is that way. And to be honest, in that episode, I thought Kane was gonna be the bad guy, but I'll get into that later. Just hold on. So, but he's not. Kane's not the bad guy. He's just very hard on the Flex Fighters because he wants them to do the best. So, okay. So there's so I talked about the Flex Fighters. I talked about Kane. Who else is there? I mean, there's other villains, but kind of like Circuit Stream, the Freak Sisters. There are other villains, but they were kind of like one-noted side villains, so I'm not going to go into that much detail. They were just there for that episode. So I'm going to leave the main villains last, okay? Because then this is where all of this, the whole story gets interesting. I also want to talk about Jake Armstrong's father. Oh my gosh, he annoyed me throughout the whole series. Talk about helicopter parenting. No. And I kind of felt bad for Jake because, he wanted to tell his dad that he was a Flex Fighter. And he wanted to tell him when everything was over with, when all the villains were put away. And still, it seemed like the dad just did not, even though the dad didn't know his identity, he was just so vocal about his opinion of the Flex Fighters, saying that they were just punks. And plus, he was always like, he expected too much from Jake, saying you gotta be this, you gotta be that, you gotta do this, you gotta do that. Just the dad as a whole, I wasn't a big fan of. Not a huge fan of helicopter parents. Sometimes they hate me, sometimes my parents do that too, but I have to tell them, back off. So, but at the same time, his dad was doing that with good intentions because of the loss of his mother and whatnot. So, yeah, you kind of see that, but at the same time, it's like Jake and his dad needed better communication, I guess you could say. Nathan Park, I liked that his grandfather was very understanding, and interesting thing is his grandfather knew he was a Flex Fighter because he said, I'm a reporter, you don't think I'm not going to know who you really are? And boom, his secret identity is out there. But at least Nathan's grandfather, or Wingspan's grandfather, was very understanding. He, he even allowed his grandson and his friends to go out and fight crime. He's like, you know what, I got your back. Don't worry about it. You do what you gotta do. So I liked his grandfather. His grandfather was very, very, like I said, understanding, the complete opposite of Jake's father, who was like hardcore on him. So, and then poor Ricardo, he had no parents. Well, he had parents, but they just were never there. And one thing I do want to say about Ricardo, actually about the Flex Fighters in general, I noticed that they're a diverse group of friends. You have, Jake Armstrong, you could say he's the white male lead, which is maybe a little typical, the white male lead, but, he is, whatever. But at least, you have Nathan Park, who's like Asian American, and then Ricardo Perez, which for me is very interesting. He's Afro-Latino. I mean, his name, Ricardo Perez, but he has, black features, which makes me happy because I myself am Afro-Latina, so it's nice to see that type of representation for the Afro-Latino community. So, props to them for doing that. Okay. So, like I said, so far I talked about the Flex Fighters. I talked about their parents, such as Jake's dad and Nathan Park's grandfather. I talked a little bit about Kane, but I didn't want to go too much detail because I'm saving, which I might as well talk about now, the villains of this show. I think the villains are what took me by surprise the most. So let's talk about Blind Strike and Dr. C, or Dr. Cleo. Okay, I'm sorry, I'm laughing because it was very shocking for me. So regarding about Blind Strike and Dr. Cleo, we thought this whole time that they were the main baddies. And, that they left, Mr. Rook's company because out of revenge and whatnot. So when the show starts, you get the impression that Blind Strike and Dr. Cleo are working together. They're partners, okay? Getting revenge against Mr. Rook. And regarding Blind Strike, when the moment in the episode where the students go on go on a field trip to like a museum, and then Blind Strike appears, and the Flex Fighters realize no one was able to get in and no one was able to get out of this museum because they were held hostage. So where did Blind Strike come from? And then they finally got to the conclusion, oh, Blind Strike has to be a student within the school system. So Blind Strike, by the way, just a little info background of Blind Strike. Well, they thought it was a he, but it turns out to be a she. She is like a martial artist, ninja type, wears a mask, has these swords made of hyperflexeria, made of the chemical that got the Flex Fighters their powers, and she's kind of like a little Black Widow, moving around. And to be honest, I thought so too at the very beginning. I was kind of like watching through the point of view of the Flex Fighters. I thought it was also a guy. But the moment, like I said, that episode happened, when it shows them in the field trip inside the museum, held hostage, and they said that Blind Strike had to be someone within the school system, I knew immediately who it was. Spoiler alert, it was Raya. Now Raya is one of the girls that goes to the academy that the Flex Fighters also attend. And by the way, Jake Armstrong has a huge crush on Raya. So, and I knew it was her the moment that episode of the museum field trip came out. I was like, oh, it's Raya. She's Blind Strike. I mean, for one, in previous episodes, she says, the Flex Fighters are kind of like, for me, I don't like them that much. And I just thought she was being kind of like emo about it, like her gloomy, dark self. I just thought she didn't like anything. But I'm like, oh, she doesn't like them because she's Blind Strike and those are her enemies, basically. That's why she doesn't like them. And also they keep saying he. The Flex Fighters keep saying, oh, Blind Strike is doing this, we gotta go get him and all that stuff. Like, nope, you better say her, because Blind Strike is a she. So I just knew something.